Have you ever scrolled past an article or turned off the news because a story didn't interest you, or maybe you thought this has nothing to do with me, so why should I waste my time? Well, I hope to get you to think twice about that. With the help of some smart and passionate people, we dare you to care. Today, I'll be discussing what it means to be a sanctuary city for gender affirming care, how Pittsburgh is taking proactive measures to pass legislation to get us there, and who's going to be impacted by this. So, in case you haven't heard, the Pittsburgh City Council unanimously passed recent legislation protecting gender affirming care from out of state investigations. And we're going to discuss how these bills will put a damper on enforcement of any future Pennsylvania bans. So joining me today for this inaugural show of Dare to Care here for Penn Capital Star is Maria Montaño. She is the new communications director for the city of Pittsburgh and the office of the mayor, Ed Gainey. Hey, Maria, it is so nice to have you here with me.
Hi, Natalie. It's such a pleasure to be with you today.
Recently, there was some legislation passed that is going to help make Pittsburgh more of a sanctuary city around gender affirming care. But before we get into the legislation itself, can you share with everyone what exactly is gender affirming care for people that may not know?
Yeah, so gender affirming care really is a spectrum of a variety of different types of services. From a medical standpoint, it could be things like puberty blockers, or it could be hormone replacement therapy. It could be various types of surgeries that help affirm transgender or non-binary individuals' presentation into this world and reflection of who they are as a human being. It could also include the various types of mental health services that are available to us. So really the broad scope of work of caring for people who are trans or non-binary in our community.
There's a lot of statistics out there that suggest that trans youth are 7.5 or more times likely to attempt suicide. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of this kind of care?
Yeah, I can speak to it because I also am a trans woman, and I can tell you that access to this type of healthcare saved my life. Growing up, I struggled with my gender identity. I would lay awake at night praying to wake up a girl and not have to go through what I was going through every day. And over a series of challenges in my life, the sort of harassment and discrimination that I received before I was able to access the care that I needed led me to be one of those individuals. And I almost was a statistic. I almost made the decision to end my life. But thankfully, I'm here with you all today. And a large part of that is because I had access to quality, competent mental health services, which led me to be able to have access to hormone replacement therapy and be able to do what I need to do to care for myself and what I need to live a healthy, full, authentic version of myself. And this care has saved countless of lives. And I'm really excited about the fact that our city is stepping up in the face of what seems like a national conversation where hundreds of pieces of legislation from across the country are moving to take away our access to that care, to make doctors who provide that care criminals. In the face of all of that, we have to ask ourselves, what can we do as a city? So one of the things that we can do is pieces of legislation like this.
So can you talk a little bit about what those conversations were like, or how it came about that this legislation was proposed?
Pittsburgh is a global leader when it comes to healthcare. So a lot of people do travel to Pittsburgh to receive various different types of healthcare. And what are we doing to protect people who come to our city for that healthcare? So, we very much looked at Councilman Wilson's work that he did around protecting access to abortion in the city of Pittsburgh, and the legislation was modeled very closely on that. And we're really excited about the fact that this legislation both sends a signal to all the trans community who calls Pittsburgh home, that like, as a city, we see you, we celebrate you, but we're also going to do what we can to protect you. While also letting providers know that this is a place that is safe for you if you live here and work here. But also, if you're a doctor in one of those other states and you're worried about your future of being able to provide care, come to Pittsburgh.
So let's get into the legislation. You've been touching a little bit on it, but let's talk about what is actually in these bills.
So it's twofold. One is it protects the gender affirming care in our city. It really establishes what our value is as a city, and saying, if you receive gender affirming care here in the city of Pittsburgh, you're going to be able to continue to receive that care. Says the same thing to our doctors. And the other portion of it is that if you travel here to receive that care, or you send a patient here, we are not going to cooperate with any other states that are going to ask us to press charges against you for doing nothing but receiving life-saving healthcare.
Were people from the trans community involved in the crafting of the language of these bills, or what was the input like around city council's decisions?
So I think there was some conversations around the council table when the legislation was introduced. And I do wish we would have been more proactive, or council would have been more proactive in doing some direct outreach into the trans community and with the city's LGBTQI plus commission. But this is a very proactive piece of legislation, and the mayor is eagerly ready to sign it and make this the law of the land in the city of Pittsburgh.
How do we take the words on the page and bring it to life, right? Because the reality is the legislation is a step forward in the right direction, but obviously the city itself, this is a complex issue. Where are people going to stay? How are we going to support them in other ways? Will they be able to get the medical support once they're here? And how would that work? So are there any plans to implement other, ideas and spring those into action, in particular around housing?
Yeah, so I think a lot to unpack here in terms of that. Yes, this is our first step, right? But I think it really is a critically important step. I think it sends a strong message during this broader national conversation. It really does shine a light on our city that is very positive. And I think that can help with those other future steps. So if we're talking about the need to have more medically competent care in our city for the trans community, for doctors who might be looking to move their practices, they're going to be looking at cities like Pittsburgh, who are taking proactive measures to protect them. This is something that we need to build and continue to build strong partnerships with the Allegheny County. So the county itself receives the vast majority of funding for health and human services. So the city does not, in fact, have a health and human services division. Really, this is a critical and important first step in a conversation of what we as a city can do to keep our trans community safe and make sure that they feel welcome here.
What is your dream scenario for gender affirming care as it relates to legislation?
Dream scenario for gender affirming care is that it's available to everybody who needs it. Right now, that isn't the case. It's still out of reach for far too many. And in too many states, it's quickly becoming completely inaccessible with bans on that care.
Are there any websites or resources that you could recommend?
Yeah, feel free to check out our City of Pittsburgh website, pittsburghpa.gov. There's always a ton of information there. You could follow us on all of our social media channels, City of Pittsburgh, Mayor Ed Gainey, to learn more about all of the great work that we're doing here in the City of Pittsburgh. And finally, come in. I'm going to make this a pitch to people. Come and work for the City of Pittsburgh and have access to this life-saving care if you need it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Natalie.
It's clear that the city of Pittsburgh is taking action and is aware of what needs to happen to make this city a true sanctuary for all. But I wanted to chat with someone from the community to share their lived experience and talk about how their life could be impacted directly by this legislation. Joining me now is Momo Winston. They sit on the board of Trans Uniting, and I've had many conversations with them in the past around the topics of trans rights. And Matoaka, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good. I'm so happy to have you here with me. So let's just get initial reactions. When you saw that Pittsburgh was moving towards making steps, becoming a sanctuary city for gender affirming care, what did you think?
I mean, honestly, and I was surprised. I never even assumed that there would be a way to protect trans people from these laws that these state legislations are passing. If that is the way to do things, and to start by citywide, we need to get everyone mobilized and working towards that future. If we have to start from city to city, that's what we're going to do.
So when you read about the bills that are being passed, what did you think? Did you think these were good? Did you think anything needed to be added to it? What were your initial thoughts?
Growing up myself, being Black, being trans, I'm already under the opinion that the government will not fight for me. So you have to start from a grassroots thing. I if until we can take control of certain things or have people who are on our who actually care about us or just decent people finally get into these positions where um, they care about more than just themselves or their own pockets. Maybe we could get more provisions, but I'm happy that there's even a discussion,
Yeah.
honestly.
The fact that there weren't any trans people really included in the conversation initially around the bills. Do you feel that was a missed opportunity here in the city?
Of course, it's a missed opportunity, especially in Pittsburgh, of all places. Pittsburgh is a very trans friendly city. We have lots of trans people in prominent positions throughout the entire state. So there's plenty of people who they could have spoken to get their opinions. There needs to be more trans voices everywhere.
What other things do we as Pittsburghers need to put in place on a systemic level or address on the systemic level in order to make this a truly sanctuary city for trans and gender nonconforming folks?
Honestly, the same situations with trans people are the same situations with all working class people at this moment. We need protections for rent. Um,
Mhm.
it's already hard enough for trans girls to get jobs. Even once you get the job, you could be discriminated against, and you could they can just make it seem like they're not being discriminatory, but you still feel that weight upon you. It's hard to keep a job, so the girls are, they resort to other things that need to be decriminalized, but they keep destabilizing trans people in so many different realms, socially, economically, even with our own families, we're, displaced at times. Pittsburgh does have a plentiful resources for trans people, and we do have a pretty strong network within ourselves,
Mhm.
but as always, we need more support because every generation, the LGBT community grows and grows and grows. And I'm one of those people that believe transgender itself just means to be against the norm of what society dictates a male and female to be or to do. I have a lot of faith in the youth. I know that the youth are coming, and it's only a matter of time.
It is only a matter of time. This series is called Dare to Care for a reason. I'm trying to get people invested in the issues that they may not think impacts them directly, but really impacts them all. So why should people dare to care about gender affirming care, even if it doesn't maybe impact them on the day to day?
Because it's just, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that's I think Martin Luther King said that. Um but that is like a fundamental fact of life, and history shows it to us. Um you always want to protect those who can't protect themselves the most. We need to make sure we um stay vigilant and make sure everyone has decent lives, and you want your fellow person to do better. I mean, it reduces crime, it reduces so many different things. In the community thrives off of individuals doing better for themselves. We have to uplift everyone for our society to do better.
Toka, how do you want people to see you?
um I just want to be seen as human. And that's another thing about this new generation. Like, people are so baffled why so many kids are saying they're gender non-conforming. It's because they just want to be human. They want to be designated as one thing. You can't do this because you're that. You can't do this because you're that. They just want to be. They want the freedom to be, and that's how I want to be seen. I want to be. I want to be human. I just want to live.
Thank you so much for joining me for the inaugural episode of Dare to Care. I so appreciate you, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me for my first episode of Dare to Care. And do you have an issue that is near to your heart that you want more people to care about? Let's connect. So find me on social media at Natalie Bencivenga or email me at admin@nataliebencivenga.com. I dare you.